Hey everyone, I'm Rob Franek. I'm Editor-in-Chief here at the Princeton Review. Thank you, as always, for joining us for yet another segment in our SAT series where we work out SAT problems together to ensure that you perform superlatively on that pesky SAT come test day. Today's segment is all about word problems, specifically SAT math word problems. And folks, let's just get something straight right up from the get-go. This kind of question is quite common, and it's one that is going to work ridiculously well with PITA. Now, that acronym, if you've watched these videos before, of course, stands for plugging in the answers. We're going to work on question 9 today, friends. And just a quick housekeeping note. You may follow along with this question in your SAT prep book. All of that information is listed specifically in the summary right here below this YouTube video. Or you can simply follow along right here on screen. Choose the platform that is best for you. But I digress. Let us get back to the problem at hand. As I've already beat down, this is a word problem. So let's keep in mind that there is a specific approach to take for word problems on the SAT, which is to start at the end, specifically to read and to underline the final question to make sure that you know exactly what the question is asking. Folks, there is of course no time like the present. Let's go, let's do it together. At the very end of this word problem, they are asking, and I quote, what is the amount of the first payment? Also remember that the SAT is a multiple choice test. That is a gift to us, friends. So let us treat it as a gift. Let those answer choices work for us. That might well give us a hint about how to work the question out, or there might be a chance to eliminate answer choices. Both are good scenarios. If you look at the answer choices here, it's all numbers, and the numbers happen to be going in order. That's actually a great big hint, and we're going to get to that point in a second. That said, whatever approach that you end up taking on the SAT math questions, always work in bite-sized pieces. Just take it step by step, one step at a time. Start with the easy part, and then keep building until you get to the end of the question. And the answer, the final question that you've already underlined. So folks, our question is a good example of why this basic approach to word problems can be very useful. Actively, it can give you a really good hint or hints about how to approach the question itself. Let's notice that the final question here is about the amount of something. It is not asking you for a specific value. It's not asking you about relationships. It's not asking you about something in terms of something else. It is just what is the specific amount. Then the answers have numbers, and those numbers, as I mentioned before, are in order. In this case, they are in descending order. Some questions might be in ascending order, but you've got numbers. And one of those 4 numbers has to be the answer to the question about the amount of the first payment, which means that the best strategy, the absolute best strategy to use here is to use PITA, plug in the answers. So we're going to try them. And we're going to keep going until we find the one that works correctly. Here are the steps for PITA, and just for, again, housekeeping, we're going to work through these together one by one on our example question. You'll want to start by, of course, labeling the answer choices. Of course, that makes sure that we all know what we're plugging in for. So we plug in for the right thing and make sure that we answer the right question. Now, this final question was, and I quote, what is the amount of the first payment? Which means the answer choices represent potential values of the first payment, of the first payment. So let's go ahead and label them. Let's label them together. Now, one of those 4 numbers is going to be the amount of the first payment. For the second step of PITA, we want to start somewhere in the middle because the numbers are in order. And if you start with B or C right in the middle of the answer choices, you might be able to figure out if the answer is too big or too small and save yourself valuable time. And of course, that is a precious commodity on the SAT. So you'll want to start with either B or C in this particular case. Now, this doesn't really matter if you start with B or C. So I'm going to go ahead and just choose C just for giggles today. So we know that it's a PITA question. We know that the answer choices represent what they represent. We also chose an answer to start with. So the next thing that we want to do is to work the steps of the problem in good bite-sized pieces that we've already talked about earlier in this segment. And then we're just going to go step by step here. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to do this together. So the first payment was $84. And let's remember that we don't know that this is correct yet, but we're going to go ahead and we're just going to play along with that answer choice for right now. Let's go back and read more of the question to figure out what's actually going on. And I quote, Zoe won the raffle at the fair. Then that doesn't give us a whole lot of information, so we're going to continue to read. And I quote, she will receive the prize money in 5 monthly payments. Now that, my friends, that is significant. So we need to have 5 payments at the end of all of this. Then the question says that each payment, and I quote, is half as much as the previous month's payment. So let's work with that information. If each payment is half the previous, well, the first payment is the answer choice. We know that. And we're pretending that that's 84 for this case. So now we can figure out the second payment. And that's how bite-sized pieces work. We go through and we think about, well, if I know this, what else can I figure out from that particular piece of information? Now, we're going to go ahead and we're going to do this and we're going to do the math together. If each payment is half the previous one, and the previous payment was $84, then the next payment is half of $84, and we're going to do a little quick arithmetic here. So the second payment is going to be $42. And then we're going to keep going, again in bite-sized pieces. So if $42 is the second payment, then we just have to figure out the third payment, which is also half of the previous payment. And if the previous payment was $42, then the new payment is going to be $21. And remember that there are 5 payments altogether, so that we pretty much know the logic that we're doing here. We're just going to continue to work through this a couple more times. If the third payment is 21, then the next payment is going to be half, and then the next payment is going to be, of course, $10.50. And that's going to be the amount for our fourth payment. And then we just have to do it one more time to get our fifth and final payment. And that fifth payment is going to be, the fourth payment was $10.50. So we're going to cut that in half. And that fifth payment is going to be $5.25. So now, folks, we've figured out what all 5 payments are based on starting with that $84. But then we need to find out if that's actually right. And that's the next step of PITA, right? We want to look for something in the question that tells us what has to happen to be the correct answer. So let's take a look. Well, now we have 5 payments. We've done that part. We've done it right. Now we've done the work for each being half of the previous. And the next part is the other information in the question is that it's the total of the payments. And it says it has to be $496. So the total is going to be the significant way to find out if we picked the right answer. So let's go ahead and take a look at that specifically. We have all 5 payments. So we find that the total, we just need to add those all together. And of course, don't forget about that first one because it's already part of the answer choices. So now we have $84 and $42, and then we're going to run that all the way to the end. So we add those all up, and it's going to add up to a whopping $162.75. But according to the question, the total is supposed to be $496. So we are way off. That's super far off. It is too small to be the right answer. So we're going to confidently eliminate answer choice C. But folks, this is why we start in the middle of the answer choices. Because we start in the middle of the answer choices, now we can tell that not only was the number that we picked wrong because it was too small, and that number was $84, and if that's too small, then of course the answer choice D, 16, is far worse. So we can cross off using good process of elimination, as we talked about in many other videos, POE, process of elimination. We cross out 2 answer choices by doing one little piece of work. Now, it doesn't matter next which one you try, because whichever you try, whether it's answer choice A or B, if it's right, then you're done. And if it's wrong, then it has to be the other answer. So we're going to make our own choice here. Maybe the math list looks a little easier for you on one answer choice than the other, but whatever the reason is, just pick it and do the steps the same way that we've been working out together. I'm going to go with B because the math looks super easy to me. So if the first payment is $96, the second payment will, of course, be half of that. The second payment is going to be $48. The third payment is going to be half of the previous payment, which is going to be $24. And the fourth payment is going to be half of the previous payment, which is going to be $12. And the fifth and final payment is going to be half of that previous payment, which is going to be $6. And again, once again, to check it, we have to do this to make sure that we've done it right. Now we need to figure out the total. And the total in this case is $186. And friends, just in case you were worried that maybe we went in the wrong direction before, there is sweet confirmation here. We got a bigger total at the end. So now we're sure that both answer choice D and C, as we talked about before, are just plain wrong. And now we also know that B is wrong because it is also too small. The answer really has to be A. There is literally no reason to actually check if it's A or not. But if you really wanted to, you of course could. But we already know from, again, POE, process of elimination, that C was too small, and hence, of course, D was too small. And as a result, we worked out all of this information, understanding that B was too small as well. The only remaining answer choice has to be the larger one, and that would give us the result of that $496. So friends, that's what PETA looks like. That's what plugging in the answers actually looks like. You're actually basically filling out a spreadsheet. And as you go through, you're just thinking about, well, if I know this first one, what else can I figure out from that piece of information? And you keep working to the end of the problem. Remember to think about checking it. So if you find the total information and you check the result of the answer choice against that, now you might be thinking that, oh, hey, I got an A when I took algebra a couple years ago, and I think I know algebra pretty well. Why wouldn't I just use algebra on this type of question? The reason not to use algebra are plenty. We're going to focus on the big three of why you should use plugging in the answers rather than algebra. Number one reason, it's faster. Number two reason, it's often easier. And number three reason, it is also safer. I'm going to do a quick demo just to show you what I mean specifically. If you look at this question again and you think about doing the algebra, well, the first thing that you have to do is create a variable. And for today, we're going to go with the variable P because we're talking about payments, and P seems like a pretty legitimate variable. Then you can use X, you can use R. Choose the variable, friends, that is right for you. But now, the hard part. You have to interpret the words and somehow make an algebraic equation out of those words specifically. So each payment is half as much as the previous. So the next payment, if it's half as much, is that times 2 or is it times a half? Now, if you're like any other students across the globe and you're asking these types of questions, then you're already thinking a little bit more than you have to when you were looking at the real numbers. That said, let us set the record straight and confirm that it is indeed half. So the next payment will be half of the first payment. And then the third payment isn't half of the first, it's half of the second one, which means that we need a half of a half. So now you're multiplying fractions, right? So you take a half of a half, which is a quarter, and that's the third payment. And then you've probably figured out the logic that we're doing here. So you have to do the same thing again. The next payment will be half of a fourth because that's the previous payment. So we get an eighth of P. And then the fifth and final payment, that'll be a half again. So a half of an eighth is 1/16. And all of that would have to equal $496. So it's already a little trickier to figure out which direction things should go and to do that fractional multiplication. But at least we have an equation down and we feel like it's a competent equation. But of course, now we have to solve for it. And with all of those fractions, it's going to get pretty messy. And of course, we all know this, but let's just say it out loud. The best way to clear out all of the fractions is simply to multiply by a common multiple, right? So 16 is a nice common multiple of 2 and 4 and 8 and 16. So let's go ahead and do it. But remember that with algebra, whatever you do on one side of the equation, you also have to do on the other side of the equation. So we'll also have to multiply the right side by 16. And if you work through this, 16 times P is pretty straightforward. 16 times a half is 8, so that's 8P. And then 16 times a fourth is 4. and 16 times an eighth is 2, and 16 times a 16th is 1. But now I have to do $496 times 16. And this, let's remember, is a no calculator question. This question comes from section C of the SAT, and I don't have a calculator to do this work, together. So now we're going to have to take our time, our precious time, that you really, of course, don't have on the SAT, to do a long multiplication to get this answer at least correctly, right? So right now, I'm going to save you the headache, and I'm going to give the answer, and the answer is 7,936. So the math gets pretty big here using the algebra route, and then you have to do even more of it. So we have to combine like terms on the left. So we see that 16 plus 8, that's 24, plus 4, that's 28, plus 2, that's 30, and let's not forget about p, it's still 1, so that's going to go to 31p at the end of all this, equaling 7,936. But wait! We now have to do more big math with some long division. And if we work through that, you're going to find out that yes, indeed, p is equal to $256. But it's a lot more work and a lot more thinking. And you have some big numbers here that you did not have to deal with when you were plugging in the answers using PETA strategy that we're talking about. So you still get the right answer, but it takes longer. It takes more thinking. And the SAT is a really long and, of course, a fast-paced test. So the less time-consuming thinking that you have to do, the less work that you have to do, the better off you are. And let's remember, and good to say this out loud, that the SAT doesn't test you on how smart you are. The SAT tests you on how well you take the SAT. And let's also remember what I had quickly noted earlier, namely, the other problem with algebra is that it is not as safe. The test writers at the College Board, the creators of all things SAT, are very clever folks, and they know that most people will approach SAT algebra questions with algebra instead of using other, we think, better and more strategic methods that we're showing you today. But someone using algebra might make a mistake. And as we had noted earlier, they might have to think a little bit more to figure out whether it's half p or 2p. And what if they made that mistake? Because without real numbers, it's just much harder to catch a mistake like that. If you think that the second payment should actually be 2p instead of half p, you would make the second payment 2p. The third payment would be double that again, so that's 4p. The fourth payment would get you to 8p, and the fifth payment would get you to 16p. And the whole thing still equals $496. And you would combine like terms again, except now you need not multiply out the fractions, and you would just get 31p equals $496. And if you divide both sides by 31, you get 16, and that is so an answer choice. But, of course, it is the wrong answer choice. So, friends, this is yet another reason to avoid algebra and use the better and more strategic approach that we've been talking about today, plugging in the answers PETA. And let's just remember, whoever created this question has planned that if you made this mistake that we just walked through, what answer choice would you get? And that answer choice, of course, exists. These are not randomly chosen answer choices, is my point. These are trap answer choices that you could get if you made a mistake with your algebra. The way to completely avoid that is to simply not use algebra. And that we're going to avoid that trap altogether, and you won't make the mistake of interpreting things incorrectly that we talked about before. You'll get this answer right quickly, and you'll get it right confidently. And let us just take a nice quick look at how beautiful and clean our plugging in the answers approach, where we're going to show it here on screen for you to take another look at it. You can, of course, watch this video as many times as you want. Let us remember, again, that any question using a specific value that gives you numbers in the answers, don't use algebra. Use plugging in the answers, PETA. If you plug in the answers, you're going to get the right answer. You're going to get the right answer, and of course, you're going to do it relatively quickly. I'm hoping that you enjoy doing some of these practice tests moving forward from today's video. I'm also hoping that you can use PITA in that exchange. And of course, from our full team at the Princeton Review, we're convinced that you're going to be happy with the results. I'm also hoping that this explanation and the strategy that we talked about today was helpful to you. Many more of these videos to come. If you haven't already, please do subscribe to our channel for the latest information on colleges and careers and test prep and a whole lot more. Rob Franek, Editor-in-Chief here at the Princeton Review, signing off for today. Be well and good luck.